Beyond the Mic with Sean Dillon.
We're joined on the Starline by a film and television writer, podcaster, and executive producer of the feature film Novocaine. His latest project, based on the true events, is Fodor's Guide to Espionage, centered on Eugene Fodor, travel writer who used his job to spy for the CIA. We welcome Lars Jacobson.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Lars, let's go beyond the mic. Why was making a podcast of Fodor important for you?
Well, first and foremost, the story is incredible. It's a story I've been trying to tell for a while. It was a series I had at one point set up as a TV series, but a podcast is truly the perfect medium to tell this story because we're globetrotting, it's period, it's big events, it's big historic figures. But it's all very contained. So you can travel the world in your mind, but you don't have to go, globetrotting and spend hundreds of millions of dollars up front to tell this story in a really authentic and dynamic way.
What story about Eugene shocked you the most?
To me, really, it's his circumstances. The fact that, no one even knew he was a spy until the 70s when he was outed during the Nixon trials. And when I went back to look at his life, this is a guy who built one of the most iconic travel writing businesses, travel guide businesses. To this day, they have over 700 permanent writers around the world. They sell hundreds of millions of travel guides. And yet he started as a family business. So you kind of tell this startup story of a guy who, was not American. He's a true American hero who, was born in Hungary, was a travel writer, saw the horizon of the Nazi and fascism, approaching the world and the effects that it was going to have. And although he wasn't an American, he went to America and said he's not going back to Europe unless it's in uniform, and enlisted, joined the OSS because he spoke 11 languages and could be a frontline interrogator, and he understood the land and the customs. And then after that, to me, once I came across his story, I was like, oh, wow, a travel writer makes the perfect spy. And he really did make the perfect spy because he spoke so many languages. You can move freely without suspicion. You can conduct surveillance. He understood customs and cultures. So he could really blend in and use his business as the perfect cover while growing this business into such a huge, iconic brand, while also maintaining this loving, dedicated relationship with his wife for 50 years until their death. So to me, it's like this guy really had it all and was able to do so many things in so many different ways, also during the Cold War, in the peak of the Cold War, where there were so many events that were consequential to the world.
Which episode of Fodor's Guide to Espionage is the one you can't wait for people to hear, and why?
Oh, that's a really good question, because I love essentially every 2 episodes, we go to a new city and a new mission, and we get to in a new big historic event. My wife is German, and she grew up in East Germany behind the wall in communist East Germany. So we 2 of the episodes take place in Berlin, and Eugene sent over to the East to bring back the KGB's top forger who wants to defect. And so we get to put him in the East. And then, so part of the motivation for Khrushchev in East Germany to build the wall overnight was not only the political exodus of so many people and to maintain their autonomy, but was also to stop Eugene from escaping. So we kind of get to have fun making these global events something very personal and something very intimate as well, while also talking about lederhosen and all kinds of fun stuff along the way. So yeah, we get to have a lot of fun while keeping it high stakes.
Lars Jacobson's podcast, Fodor's Guide to Espionage. He wants you to listen to it, but it's my turn, so I'm going to make you deal, Lars, with a Rockin aid. It's 8 random questions. Answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. There is no pressure. You have so many projects going on, podcasts, major motion pictures, and a limited series on Peacock. What do you do to relax?
That's a good question. I spend time with my boys and my family, and honestly, I enjoy all of it. It's so nice to kind of spend time in these worlds, and these are all stories that I'm very passionate about. So I've been very busy, but it's all stuff that I enjoy. And and when I'm not doing that, I'm spending time with my family and doing entertaining myself and discovering other new worlds, hopefully.
What place would you like to visit on the basis of Fodor's travel guide?
Ooh, you know what? And it's kind of strange. I've been to most of the other places, fortunately, because they're in Europe, and I've had a chance to travel a good amount, especially with my wife being European. I think it's really interesting to visit Havana, Cuba, and that world, because that was not something I was very experienced with and didn't have much knowledge about, but it's got such an interesting, rich history, from the Spanish-American War to Havana itself, to the Cuban Missile Crisis, to the hotels where the mafia would meet during before Cuba was shut down. It was very compelling. So to me, that was probably the world I discovered the most about, that I was the least familiar.
Lars, what scares you the most?
I think the idea that this nuclear annihilation and nuclear war has not been put to bed, 60 years later, with a lot of the same stories and a lot of the same circumstances are still, repeating themselves today. And obviously Oppenheimer educated a lot of people on the nuclear bomb, and it's become shown a light on it. But it continues to be something, and even in the last weeks, Putin's talking about nuclear, dropping nuclear bombs and the threat of that. And so the fact that it continues to be a real existential threat is definitely scary, and something that you realize through the course of piecing together these timelines of these events in the Cold War. When you hear about them historically out of context, you think, oh, that must have happened years in between. But the fact that a lot of this was happening sequentially and within a much tighter space, makes you realize that there are a lot of events that you might not think are as significant, but could be tremendously significant in hindsight.
When flying, just sit in the aisle, middle, or window seat?
You got to go with the window, because I'm trying to sleep.
What do you pamper yourself with?
Oh man, what do I pamper myself with? That's a good question. I'd have to say definitely like to go out to eat, and I like to travel. So if I'm going to spend my money on experiences, it'll probably be like, I'm definitely not as interested in material things as experiences. So being out, going places, that'd be fun.
If you could write for any actor, who would you want reading your lines?
Oh, man. Tom Hardy, huge fan of this guy. I think he's just brings a level of intensity, and he's so dynamic. Yeah, I'd say he would be a very interesting character. I don't know if he'd necessarily be a great Eugene Fodor, but I think he's a tremendous actor, and I'm sure he could do anything.
How about the first thing you bought after you got your first paycheck?
Oh, man, that's a good question. After my first paycheck, you know what? I think we went on vacation. That's really what it was. Yeah, that was probably one of the trips. Back to the traveling. Exactly. That was really it. It was like, man, go rent a house in Tuscany, invite some friends, have a good time. That was definitely.
Which charity holds a special place in your heart?
Oh man, foster care. We are definitely a big supporter of foster charities. I definitely feel when children are put at risk or don't have the proper foundation and support, I find that to be the most troubling.
It's time for One Big Question with Lars Jacobson. His podcast is Fodor's Guide to Espionage Beyond the Mic. Lars, what's the one thing you want people to get out of this story?
Really, I would love for them to, enjoy the experience and get immersed in kind of the world, hopefully learn a little bit about history, learn a little bit about the world, places they might want to see, while taking part of a really high stakes, compelling, engrossing spy mission and an exotic vacation all at the same time. I want to take people, around the world and do some globe trotting while taking them on a spy mission and exotic vacation. If they can do that, then I've accomplished my goal.
He loves traveling, needs the window seat, and wants you to hear Fodor's Guide to Espionage. Lars Jacobson, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
And that, my friends, is a Beyond the Mic shortcut. If you're enjoying these conversations, please check out another Beyond the Mic episode to find more actors, artists, and people you need to know. We'd also appreciate a like and subscribe on the Good Pods app.